The day my sister became CEO of our family business was supposed to feel like a moment of shared pride. Instead, it was the day she looked me dead in the eyes and fired me without hesitation. I can still remember the weight of that morning, the nervous chatter in the boardroom, the clinking of coffee cups against saucers, the faint hum of the air conditioner trying to cut through the summer heat. I had been with the company for nearly a decade, pouring every ounce of myself into it, believing that one day my loyalty and hard work would be recognized. I never expected betrayal to be what recognition looked like. I was 32 years old, the eldest daughter in the Connors family. For years I had carried the invisible burdens, the after-hours projects, the difficult negotiations, the late-night strategy sessions when no one else wanted to take the call. My father, the founder, had raised us both inside the rhythm of the business. It was more than a company. It was the language of our family, the very air we breathed. So when he stepped down, I thought I knew what would happen. Valerie, my younger sister by 3 years, would take over the title. She was always the star, the one with the polished smile, the perfect posture, the kind of charm that turned investors into friends within 5 minutes. And me, I would be her right hand, the steady one, the quiet backbone. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real. I told myself I was ready for that role, that my place was secure because I had earned it. But the truth is, I underestimated just how much resentment can hide behind a smile. When Valerie was formally introduced as CEO, applause filled the boardroom. My palms stung from clapping, though my chest ached with mixed emotions. I was proud, yes, but I was also raw with longing. I had dreamed of this moment too, though I had never dared to say it out loud. And then came the silence that followed. Valerie cleared her throat, her eyes scanning the table with the sharp precision of someone who already knew the script. "There will be changes," she said, effective immediately. Her voice was calm, but her words cut like knives. She spoke of restructuring, of needing fresh direction, of trimming unnecessary positions. When her gaze landed on me, I knew. Before the words even came, I knew. "Valerie," I began, but she didn't let me finish. "Effective immediately," she said again, her voice firmer this time. "Valerie Connors as CEO is terminating your position, Valerie Ann." It was surreal hearing my name spoken so formally, so coldly. I waited for the laughter, the reveal that this was some twisted joke, but the silence stretched on and I realized she meant it. I laughed then, not because it was funny, but because sometimes laughter is the only thing left between you and a scream. The board shifted uncomfortably, no one daring to meet my eyes. I saw pity on one face, relief on another, betrayal on all of them. I gathered my things quietly, my hands shaking only when no one could see. When I walked out of the building, the sunlight hit me like a slap. My chest tightened, and I wanted to collapse right there on the sidewalk. But something inside me, something that had been buried for years, kept me upright. As I walked away, I thought about every sacrifice I had made. The birthdays I missed, the relationships that failed, the vacations I never took, all because I was loyal to the company, to my family, to her. And this was how it ended. At home that night, I sat at the kitchen table in silence, the resignation papers folded neatly in front of me like a death certificate. I stared at them until the words blurred. Fired, terminated, redundant. The betrayal wasn't just in losing my job. It was in the way she had done it, with such ease, such precision, as if she had been waiting for this moment her entire life. I thought back to when we were children. Valerie was always the golden one, while I was the reliable one. She wore the dresses, I ironed them. She delivered the speeches, I drafted them. She smiled for the camera, I stood just outside the frame. And I told myself that was okay, that my role in the shadows was just as valuable. But that night, in the dim glow of my kitchen lamp, I realized how much I had swallowed over the years. And for what? To be discarded by the very sister I had protected, supported, and even envied. It's strange how betrayal sharpens memory. I remembered the time she borrowed money from me in college and never paid it back. The time she whispered to our father that my ideas weren't practical, then presented them as her own weeks later. The time she smiled sweetly at me across the table while cutting me out of a deal behind my back. I had ignored those moments, telling myself that's just how siblings were. But now they all came rushing back, forming a pattern I could no longer deny. I wasn't just fired, I was erased. The days that followed were a haze. People called, some out of pity, some out of curiosity, some pretending they didn't know the truth. I ignored most of them. But one night, Grandma called. Her voice was steady, the kind of voice that had carried me through heartbreak before. "Valerie," she said gently, "I heard what happened, and I want you to know you don't have to stay quiet anymore." Her words cracked something open in me. Stay quiet. That was what I had always done. I had swallowed the hurt, folded it neatly, and stored it in the attic of my chest. But maybe, just maybe, it was time to let the attic burn. I didn't know what revenge would look like. I didn't know if justice was even possible in a world where charm triumphed over loyalty, where betrayal wore lipstick and pearls. But I knew one thing: I was done being silent. And as the city lights flickered outside my window, I whispered to myself almost like a prayer. She may have fired me, but she has no idea what she's unleashed. In the weeks that followed, the world felt strangely muted, as if someone had turned down the volume on everything I used to recognize. I would wake up at the usual time, pour my coffee, dress in my work clothes out of sheer habit, only to remember I had nowhere to go. No meetings to lead, no late-night calls to manage, no deals to close. The silence was suffocating. I kept replaying that boardroom moment in my mind over and over like a cruel loop. Valerie's calm voice, the way she didn't even hesitate, the look of relief on some faces around the table, relief that it was me and not them. Betrayal tastes bitter, but silence, that was worse. No one had defended me, not one. At first I told myself I didn't care, that I was free now, unchained from the endless grind, but freedom feels hollow when it's forced upon you. I hadn't chosen to walk away. I had been pushed hard by the one person I thought I could at least trust to stand beside me. It wasn't just a job, it was my family's legacy. My father had built that company with his bare hands, late nights, long hours, sacrifices that cost him more than he ever admitted. And I had been there learning, growing, giving myself to it piece by piece. I thought I was honoring him. And yet Valerie had stepped into his shoes and erased me like chalk from a blackboard. I started noticing things, rumors trickling through the grapevine. Friends inside the company whispered to me carefully, meeting in quiet cafes or sending encrypted texts. "She's making big changes," one former colleague said, "cutting deals with people who don't have the company's best interests at heart." Another told me she's alienating the longtime partners. Too aggressive, too flashy, but no one dares say anything. At first I wanted to dismiss it as bitterness. But the more I heard, the more a picture formed. Valerie wasn't just ambitious, she was reckless. Late one night I sat with Grandma again. She poured tea into delicate china cups. Her movements steady, the way they always were. "She always envied you, you know," Grandma said softly, breaking the silence. "Envied me." I let out a bitter laugh. "She's the CEO. She has the power, the money, the name. What could she possibly envy? You were the one your father relied on," Grandma replied. "The one who stayed late, who did the work." No one applauded. "Valerie may have had the spotlight, but deep down she knew the foundation was you." Her words cut deep, not because they surprised me, but because they explained so much. Valerie hadn't just fired me to prove she could. She had fired me to erase the reminder of her own insecurity. Memories surfaced, childhood moments I had forgotten, or maybe ignored. Valerie crying when she lost a spelling bee, accusing me of sabotaging her practice time. Valerie begging me to finish her homework in high school, then bragging about her grades. Valerie whispering lies about me to our father, only to smile sweetly when I confronted her. I thought those were just childish rivalries. I never realized they were the seeds of something darker. And now those seeds had grown into a crown sitting on her head, heavy with power she didn't know how to wield. One evening as I scrolled through the news, I saw her face splashed across a business journal. The headline read, "New CEO Valerie Connors signals aggressive expansion plans." Her smile was dazzling, her quotes full of confidence. But I could read between the lines. She was promising things she couldn't deliver, risking everything our father had built for the sake of her own ego. And for the first time since she fired me, I didn't feel crushed. I felt something else. A strange, simmering sense of power. Because I knew her better than anyone. I knew her weaknesses, her blind spots, the cracks in the armor she had polished so carefully. She thought she had erased me, but I was still here, watching, waiting, I decided to start keeping records, not of my own pain this time, but of hers. Every rumor, every mistake, every reckless choice. I documented it all, quietly, carefully, the way I used to manage late-night crises. Only this time, the crisis wasn't mine. It was hers. In the middle of this quiet preparation, I got a call from my mother. Her voice was soft, uncertain. "Valerie told me you were struggling, that you couldn't handle the pressure anymore. That's why she made the decision." My breath caught. She wasn't just rewriting history inside the company. She was rewriting it in the family too, painting me as weak, unstable, incapable. I wanted to scream, to tell my mother the truth. But instead I asked quietly, "And do you believe her?" There was a pause, then a sigh. "I don't know what to believe anymore." The line went silent after that, but the damage was done. Valerie wasn't content with firing me. She was dismantling me piece by piece, even in the eyes of the people who mattered most. That night I stood at my window looking out at the city lights, and I realized something that both terrified and thrilled me. She was powerful, yes, but power without wisdom is a ticking bomb, and when it exploded, I would be ready. The laughter I had given her in the boardroom, it wasn't madness, it was prophecy. Because she thought she had destroyed me, but really she had given me the one thing I had never had before: freedom to fight back. The first real crack appeared only a month after she fired me. It came in the form of a phone call from an old colleague, Daniel, who had been in sales for nearly 20 years. His voice was low, urgent, the way people speak when they're afraid someone might overhear. "Valerie's pushing us into a deal with Titan Global," he whispered. "On paper it looks shiny, big numbers, flashy promises. But the fine print, it's poison. They'll bleed the company dry." I leaned back in my chair, my heart pounding. Titan Global. I knew them. Ruthless in negotiations, infamous for swallowing smaller companies whole. My father had once walked away from a similar deal, calling it the velvet noose. And now my sister was rushing headlong into it. "She won't listen," Daniel continued. "Anyone who raises a concern gets shut down. She keeps saying, 'We have to prove we're bigger than Dad ever dreamed.'" I closed my eyes, a bitter smile tugging at my lips. That was Valerie, always desperate to outshine, to prove she wasn't just living in someone else's shadow. But in her hunger, she couldn't see the trap. When I hung up, I sat in silence, staring at the notes I'd been keeping. Reckless decisions, burned bridges, lies whispered into our mother's ear. It was all adding up. But it wasn't enough to watch from the sidelines. I needed to act. The question was how. Late that night, I found myself walking the quiet streets near my apartment, the cool air sharpening my thoughts. I realized that revenge wasn't about striking blindly, it was about timing. About waiting for the exact moment when the opponent's own weight would pull them down, and then making sure they couldn't rise again. Valerie's weakness had always been her obsession with image. She wanted the spotlight, wanted the applause, wanted the world to see her as brilliant and unstoppable. That was the chink in her armor. If I could expose the truth publicly, not just privately, her empire would crumble. I reached out to a contact at the Financial Herald, a journalist named Leah who had covered our company for years. She respected my father deeply and had always suspected Valerie was more glitter than substance. When I told her I had information, her voice sharpened instantly. "If you've got proof, I'll publish it. But it has to be airtight." Proof. That was the word that echoed in my head. Proof would make this more than sibling rivalry. Proof would make it undeniable. Over the next few weeks, I collected everything I could. Contracts Valerie had signed without board approval, emails leaked by nervous employees, meeting notes scribbled in the margins of agendas. I pieced together a narrative careful and precise. And as I worked, I found something unexpected. I wasn't just exposing her, I was rediscovering myself. For the first time, I wasn't living in her shadow. I wasn't the quiet support or the forgotten sibling. I was taking control, shaping the story, writing my own role. Then came the shareholders' meeting. Valerie strutted onto the stage in a crimson suit, her heels clicking like gunshots. She smiled wide and dazzling as she painted a picture of unstoppable growth. Charts soared behind her. Projections glittered. The applause was polite but thin. And then Leah's article dropped. Phones buzzed across the room. Murmurs spread like wildfire. Screens lit up with headlines. Connors Industries CEO, accused of reckless deals. Inside sources reveal dangerous ties. I watched from the back as Valerie's smile faltered just for a second. She recovered quickly, smoothing her expression, but the damage was done. Questions flew from the audience. Investors demanded explanations. Board members exchanged sharp looks. She tried to brush it off as misinterpretation, but the seed of doubt had been planted. That night, my phone buzzed with messages from people inside the company. "Did you see her face?" one wrote. "She's spiraling." Another said, "The board is furious. They're considering a vote of no confidence." I should have felt triumphant, and part of me did. But beneath the thrill, there was grief too. This was my sister. We had shared bunk beds, birthday cakes, secrets whispered in the dark. And yet here we were, tearing each other apart on a stage for the world to see. Grandma called me again, her voice gentle. "Are you sure this is what you want Valerie, to bring her down like this?" I hesitated. "She fired me. She lied about me. She's destroying everything Dad built." "I know," Grandma said softly. "But revenge has a way of consuming more than just its target." Her words lingered, but I couldn't turn back. The wheel was already in motion. Over the next few days, the cracks widened. Suppliers pulled back. Long-term partners demanded renegotiations. Investors grew restless. Valerie doubled down, lashing out at anyone who questioned her. She fired 2 senior executives, blaming them for the bad press. The company felt like a ship veering toward a storm, and she was too blinded by pride to see it. Then came the call I had been waiting for. It was from Mark, one of the board members. His voice was clipped, cautious. "We know you've been feeding information to the press. And frankly, I don't blame you. But if you really want to protect this company, we'll need you back. Off the record, of course." Quietly. I stood by the window, staring at the city below. The irony wasn't lost on me. Fired 1 month, begged to return the next. I didn't laugh this time. I just felt the weight of it all pressing against my chest. "Let me think about it," I said, because this wasn't just about the company anymore. It was about me, about whether I wanted to step back into that world or whether I wanted to build something entirely my own. But one thing was certain: Valerie's reign was cracking, and the end was coming faster than she realized. And I would be there when it all fell apart. Her boardroom I had once known so well now felt like an echo chamber of whispers, doubts, and quiet rage. For years, those walls had been filled with my father's booming voice, the steady rhythm of strategy, the familiar banter of colleagues who had become family. Now they were filled with chaos. And at the center of it all was Valerie. The article had done its damage, but what followed was worse. Investors pulled out of projects. Our credit rating was downgraded. Long-standing partners froze their contracts, unwilling to risk being dragged down by reckless deals. For the first time in her career, Valerie wasn't the golden girl. She was a liability. I heard about the board's emergency session through Mark. His tone was clipped but loaded. "They're preparing a vote," he said. "If she can't stabilize things in the next 2 weeks, she's out." I should have felt vindicated. And in part I did. But as I sat in my small apartment staring at the city skyline, I couldn't ignore the weight of it. This wasn't just Valerie's downfall, it was the company's survival. My father's legacy. My legacy, too. When the board finally reached out, it wasn't to scold me, it was to ask for help. "Valerie," Mark said carefully over the phone, "we know you've been watching all of this. And we know you're capable. If things don't turn around, we'll need someone to steady the ship." His words hung in the air, heavy with possibility. I laughed softly, bitterly. "You mean the sister she fired without a second thought?" Mark's silence told me everything. They were desperate. And desperate people see clearly what they once ignored. That night I thought about my father. About the years he built the company brick by brick, sacrificing weekends, holidays, even his health to create something he could pass down. He had dreamed it would unite us. Instead, it had torn us apart. Grandma's voice echoed in my mind. Revenge consumes more than just its target. Was I doing this to save the company, or to watch Valerie burn? The truth, I realized, was complicated, maybe both. The next time I saw Valerie was at a shareholder gathering. She stood at the podium, her crimson lipstick perfect, her suit tailored within an inch of its life. She spoke of vision, of boldness, of weathering the storm. But her voice lacked its usual conviction. Her smile flickered too often. The sharks could smell blood. And then came the questions. What about Titan Global? An investor demanded. Why did you push through without board approval? Another asked. Are the rumors true that two executives resigned over your leadership style? Each question chipped at her armor. She deflected, she spun, but the room was no longer buying what she was selling. I watched from the back, unseen, unnoticed. My chest tightened as I saw the fear flash across her eyes. For a moment, I almost pitied her. Almost. Afterward, I lingered near the exits. She emerged, heels clicking, her expression hard. When she saw me, she froze. Well, if it isn't the ghost of Connor's Industries, she sneered. I smiled faintly. Ghosts don't scare people unless they have unfinished business. Her jaw tightened. You think you've won, don't you? Feeding the press, whispering in the board's ear? You're pathetic. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. I didn't make those deals, Valerie. You did. I didn't alienate our partners or silence our team or gamble with everything Dad built. That was you. For the first time, I saw her mask crack. Just a flicker, but enough. Behind her fury was fear. Enjoy your little moment, she spat before sweeping away into the night. But the cracks only deepened. Over the next week, leaks multiplied. Contracts she had mishandled surfaced. Whispers of misconduct reached the press. Her name, once praised, was now dragged through headlines like mud. And then came the board's decision. On a rainy Thursday morning, the vote was called. The room was tense, every breath audible. Valerie stood at the head of the table, still trying to look untouchable. But her hands trembled as the ballots were counted. No confidence, the chairman announced, effective immediately. Silence followed, heavy and suffocating. Valerie's face drained of color. She opened her mouth, closed it again, then turned to leave. But before she could step out, the chairman spoke again. And to stabilize the company, we will be appointing an interim leader, someone who knows this business, who understands its foundation. Valerie Ann Connors. All eyes turned to me. My breath caught, my heart hammering. I had imagined this moment in dreams, in quiet whispers to myself late at night. But hearing it aloud, it was overwhelming. I rose slowly, my legs shaky, and nodded. I'll do everything I can to honor this company's legacy, I said. Valerie glared at me, her eyes burning with hatred and disbelief. For a moment, I thought she might lunge across the room, but instead she laughed bitterly. Of course. You've been waiting for this your whole life. I met her gaze steadily. No, I've been working for it my whole life. Her laughter faded, and with that she was gone. That night, as I sat in my new office, the office that had once been hers, I felt a flood of emotions. Triumph, grief, exhaustion, resolve. I stared at the framed photo of my father on the wall, his smile frozen in time. Dad, I whispered, I don't know if this is victory or punishment, but I promise you this, I'll protect what you built, even if it means protecting it from her. Taking over as interim CEO was nothing like I imagined. On the surface, it seemed like vindication, a rightful restoration after betrayal. But in reality, it was like walking into a burning building. Every corridor of Connor's Industries reeked of smoke left by my sister's reckless choices. Contracts had been rushed, partners were on edge, employees were exhausted and afraid. I spent the first week doing what Valerie never had, listening. I sat with the finance team, the project managers, even the janitors. I wanted to know what they had seen, what they had felt. Their words cut me deeply. She pushed us to sign deals we knew would hurt in the long run. She didn't want feedback. She wanted obedience. People were terrified of losing their jobs if they spoke up. I carried those words like stones in my chest. This wasn't just about salvaging numbers, it was about healing wounds. The board gave me 3 months to stabilize the company, or they would consider outside leadership. That deadline hung over me like a shadow. But for the first time in years, I felt a strange fire in my bones. I wasn't working to please Valerie. I wasn't working for applause or approval. I was working because this company was part of me. And Valerie, she wasn't done. Every week, I heard whispers of her attempts to claw her way back. She showed up at investor events, spinning her own narrative. She painted herself as the victim, claiming I had orchestrated everything. Some believed her, others turned away. But she never stopped trying. One evening, I received an unexpected call. It was from Mom. Her voice trembled. She came to the house, Val. She begged me to intervene. She said you destroyed her. I pressed the phone to my ear, staring at the city lights beyond my office window. And what do you believe, Mom? There was a long pause. Then softly, I believe what I see. And I see you holding us together while she tears herself apart. Those words gave me strength, but they also ached. Because for all her cruelty, Valerie was still my sister. I had loved her once with the fierce loyalty only siblings can know, and part of me still grieved for that bond we had lost. Weeks turned into months. Slowly, Connor's Industries began to stabilize. I renegotiated contracts, humbled myself before old partners promised transparency. I cut wasteful projects, but I protected jobs where I could. For the first time in years, employees felt safe enough to speak up. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was real. And it mattered. Then the final blow came for Valerie. A partner she had tried to impress went public with documents exposing her reckless promises. Headlines screamed her downfall. Investors distanced themselves. Her name became synonymous with arrogance and failure. The day the news broke, I sat in my office staring at the glowing screen. My phone buzzed with congratulatory messages with praise from people who once doubted me. But I felt no triumph, only sorrow. Because I realized something important: revenge doesn't heal. It doesn't erase the wound. It only exposes the truth. And the truth was, Valerie had built her empire on envy and lies, and it was destined to collapse. One evening, weeks later, I found myself standing outside Grandma's house. She welcomed me in with tea and her familiar warmth. As we sat at the table, she reached across and held my hand. "You've done well, child," she said. "But tell me, has it given you peace?" I thought about that for a long time. Finally, I whispered, "Not peace, but clarity." She nodded knowingly. "Sometimes that's enough." The company continued to heal, and eventually the board removed the word interim from my title. I became CEO not by stealing or scheming, but by surviving, by enduring, by refusing to stay silent when betrayal came. Valerie faded from the public eye. Some said she moved abroad, others whispered she was plotting a comeback. I didn't chase the rumors. For me, she was no longer the center of my story. I was. And here's the truth I want you to carry with you. Betrayal will come often from those closest to you. It will shatter you in ways you don't expect, but it can also reveal your strength. Because when the people you trust most try to erase you, you learn to write your name even louder. My sister fired me the moment she became CEO. She thought she had ended me, but what she really did was free me to find my own voice, my own strength, my own legacy. If my story touched you, if you've ever faced betrayal and found yourself standing in its shadow, know that you are not alone. Share your truth, claim your strength, and never let anyone rewrite your story for you. Please, like this video if it resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more stories of betrayal, resilience, and the quiet power of survival. Leave me a comment, I'd love to hear your own story. Because in the end, betrayal may break the bond, but it can never break the spirit.